Why did America and Iran become enemies? The relationship between the United States and Iran is one of the most complex and controversial rivalries in modern history. For decades, the two nations have been locked in a cycle of political disputes, economic sanctions, military tensions, and diplomatic confrontations. Whenever a crisis erupts in the Middle East, attention quickly turns toward Washington and Tehran, as many people wonder why these two countries have remained adversaries for so long. To understand the origins of this conflict, it is necessary to look back into the 20th century. Before the Iranian Revolution, the United States and Iran maintained relatively close relations. Iran was considered one of America's most important allies in the Middle East. The country occupied a strategic location, possessed vast energy resources, and served as a key partner in regional security. However, tensions began to develop due to disagreements over political influence and control of natural resources. One of the most significant events occurred in 1953 when Iranian Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh sought to nationalize Iran's oil industry. At the time, much of Iran's oil wealth was controlled by foreign interests. Mossadegh argued that Iran should have greater control over its own resources and profits. Soon afterward, Mossadegh was removed from power in a coup that remains controversial to this day. Many Iranians believe that the United States and Britain played an important role in supporting the operation. Whether viewed as a strategic decision during the Cold War or an intervention in Iran's internal affairs, the event left a lasting impact on Iranian public opinion. Following the coup, Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi strengthened his rule and maintained close ties with the United States. Under the Shah, Iran experienced significant modernization and economic development. Major infrastructure projects were launched, industries expanded, and relations with Western countries grew stronger. Despite these developments, many Iranians became increasingly dissatisfied with the Shah's government. Critics accused the regime of corruption, political repression, and excessive dependence on foreign powers. Opposition movements grew throughout the country, eventually leading to widespread protests during the late 1970s. The situation reached a turning point in 1979 when the Iranian Revolution overthrew the Shah and established the Islamic Republic under Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. The revolution dramatically transformed Iran's domestic and foreign policies. The new leadership rejected many aspects of Western influence and adopted a much more confrontational stance toward the United States. Later that year, a group of Iranian students seized the American embassy in Tehran and took dozens of U.S. diplomats hostage. The hostage crisis lasted 444 days and became one of the most significant diplomatic confrontations of the 20th century. Millions of Americans watched the crisis unfold on television, and it fundamentally changed how many people viewed Iran. For Iran's revolutionary leadership, the embassy takeover symbolized resistance against foreign interference. For the United States, it represented a violation of international law and diplomatic norms. The event created deep mistrust that would shape relations for decades. During the 1980s, tensions increased further because of the Iran-Iraq War. When Iraq invaded Iran in 1980, the conflict quickly became one of the deadliest wars in modern Middle Eastern history. Although the United States did not directly enter the war against Iran, Washington generally viewed Iraq as a counterbalance to Iranian influence. The war lasted 8 years and resulted in hundreds of thousands of casualties. The conflict devastated both countries and contributed to Iran's perception that powerful nations were willing to support its enemies when strategic interests were involved. Throughout the following decades, disagreements continued over regional politics, security concerns, and ideological differences. American leaders often criticized Iran's support for armed groups operating in various parts of the Middle East. Iranian officials, meanwhile, argued that they were defending their interests and supporting allies facing external threats. As the Cold War ended and new geopolitical challenges emerged, another issue began to dominate international discussions: Iran's nuclear program. Iranian authorities maintained that their nuclear activities were intended for peaceful purposes such as electricity generation and scientific research. However, the United States and several allies expressed concerns that Iran could eventually develop nuclear weapons. These concerns became one of the most important factors shaping relations between Washington and Tehran. International negotiations, inspections, sanctions, and diplomatic initiatives all revolved around the nuclear quests. As the rivalry between the United States and Iran entered the 21st century, competition between the two countries increasingly centered on influence in the Middle East. Both nations viewed the region as strategically important, but their goals and alliances often conflicted. This competition became especially visible after the 2003 Iraq War, which dramatically changed the balance of power in the region. Following the fall of Saddam Hussein's government, Iran gained significant influence inside Iraq through political, religious, and economic connections. American officials grew concerned that Tehran was expanding its regional reach. Iran, however, viewed the developments differently, arguing that it was simply protecting its interests in a neighboring country with deep historical and cultural ties. Another major area of disagreement involved Syria. When civil war erupted in the country in 2011, Iran strongly supported the Syrian government, while the United States supported different groups within the opposition. The conflict became one of the most complex wars in modern history, involving numerous regional and international actors. As a result, Syria became another arena where American and Iranian interests collided. Lebanon also remained an important point of tension. Iran maintained close relations with powerful political and military groups in the country, while the United States continued to support Lebanon's government institutions and regional allies. Similar disagreements emerged in Yemen, where opposing sides received support from different regional powers. Beyond politics and military strategy, economic pressure became one of Washington's primary tools for dealing with Tehran. The United States imposed extensive sanctions targeting Iran's banking sector, energy industry, and international trade. American leaders argued that these measures were necessary to pressure Iran into changing policies related to regional security and nuclear activities. The effects of sanctions were significant. Iran faced periods of economic hardship, currency instability, inflation, and reduced access to international markets. Supporters of sanctions claimed they were a peaceful alternative to military action. Critics argued that the measures often placed the greatest burden on ordinary citizens rather than political leaders. One of the most important diplomatic efforts occurred in 2015 when Iran and several world powers reached a landmark nuclear agreement. Supporters viewed the agreement as a major breakthrough that reduced the risk of conflict and increased international oversight of Iran's nuclear activities. Critics, however, argued that the deal did not adequately address all security concerns. The future of the agreement became uncertain after political changes in several countries. Renewed disagreements over sanctions and compliance led to increased tensions and raised concerns about the possibility of future confrontation. The rivalry intensified dramatically in January 2020 when the United States conducted a military strike that killed Iranian General Qasem Soleimani in Iraq. The event generated worldwide attention and triggered fears of a larger conflict. Soleimani was considered one of Iran's most influential military figures, and his death marked one of the most serious escalations in years. Iran responded with missile strikes targeting bases housing American personnel. Although the confrontation did not develop into a full-scale war, many observers believed the situation demonstrated how quickly tensions could escalate. The incident also highlighted the risks associated with prolonged hostility between the two countries. Military analysts frequently warn that a direct war between the United States and Iran would have consequences extending far beyond the battlefield. Unlike many previous regional conflicts, such a confrontation could affect global energy markets, international trade, and worldwide economic stability. One reason for this concern is the importance of the Persian Gulf. The region contains some of the world's largest oil and natural gas reserves. A significant portion of global energy supplies passes through the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway located near Iran. Any disruption in this area could affect fuel prices and economic activity across the world. Both countries also possess considerable military capabilities. The United States maintains one of the most advanced armed forces in history, supported by extensive global alliances and military infrastructure. Iran, while smaller in conventional military power, has invested heavily in missiles, drones, naval forces, and regional partnerships that could complicate any conflict. For this reason, many experts argue that diplomacy remains the most effective path forward. Although negotiations between the two sides have often been difficult, diplomatic efforts provide opportunity